I'm sure Saudara Adi will able to share some of their thoughts and perhaps concerns. Ladies and gentlemen, Adi Putra, please.
Termakan. Sini ada si lebih Robert. Termakan.
Hello.
Okay.
Firstly, I would like to say that I'm very honored to be speaking here today. Although I might admit I'm a bit a bundle of nerves right now, but I'll try to do my best. So, Salam Satu Malaysia, or should I say, Salam New Malaysia, Malaysia Baru. And what does a new Malaysia mean? It comes with it new changes. And what changes are there? New voters, a young group of people. Just imagine, young people now, 15 years old, 16 years old, 17, 18, 19, 20, will be voting in the next general election in the coming 3 years. They'll be entering the voting stations. So imagine a cohort of 6 different age groups entering voting stations. Some people might say that that could be a huge game changer in Malaysian politics. It shakes the very core of how we garner elections, how we garner support at the elections, and presents a new challenge in trying to make sure that we take into considerations of young people. So let's take a look at what Undi 18 was supposed to be and what it really is. Next slide.
Orang-orang tua kena pindah. Karena suruh pindah orang tua, baru kamu tahu.
So let's take a look at Undi 18. Why does it matter? So when we look at Undi 18, it was marketed as change that would present a net benefit for what Malaysia and its development. So why should Undi 18 happen? Because Malaysia is going through this process of democratizing its electoral processes. Undi 18 was a perfect example of how we are continuing to democratize and involve a wider population within the determination of where our country is heading. Young people nowadays are becoming more aware of the political environment that they are situated in. I remember distinctly, I was on this phone call with my friend, and we were discussing about politics, and Mahathir came up on the subject. And then when his 6-year-old nephew heard the name Mahathir, he went crazy. He just ran up to the phone and shouted, "Are you talking to Mahathir? I want to talk to Mahathir." And it just shows that even children as young as 6 years old are aware of political figures. They are aware of the people they see leading the country. And this goes in hand, supplemented by rapid processes of globalization. Now information is being spread faster than ever. We're being bombarded by information every single day. When we open our smartphones, when we look at the laptop, we see news covering all kinds of subjects. And sometimes that can be quite overwhelming, seeing how sometimes our mind may not even be able to comprehend how much that we're absorbing. But when you look at people who are 15 years old now, they were born even in 2004, an age where you can say that smartphones are becoming popular, Wi-Fi is becoming basically a universal basic necessity, that without Wi-Fi, that you can kind of imagine how life would be for young people. And they grew up in this kind of environment where they're able to acclimate, they're more familiar with how to understand and take in all this information that's coming in. So from that viewpoint, it stands to be show why Undi 18 was a good move in moving towards a new age, especially one where technology is coming hand in hand with our daily lives, and young people being best suited to wield that kind of technology. Well, that is the assumption of the value and benefit from Undi 18. But what really happened was that the whole process to move towards Undi 18 felt accelerated and leaves much to be desired. I remember when Syed Saddiq announced that he was going to campaign for it, it was right after the Hari Raya celebrations. And then they moved into the parliamentary proceedings, and then next thing you know, it was already agreed upon. And that felt like it wasn't enough time to gauge public sentiment, nor was it enough time to generate debate enough on whether that this was a proper move overall. And it felt from a layman's point of view, from coming from a basis that's non-consultational, were adequate groups actually consulted when in favor of how Undi 18 would actually can be implemented effectively or not? What were the patterns in terms of politics for young people at the time? And it's important to gauge these sentiments because you can see if our young people are potentially responsible voters, are they mature enough to wield this kind of power? Okay, next slide. And that's why I'm going to take a quote from Heraclitus that you cannot step into the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and you are not the same person. And this enshrines the idea of how we humans, we have this really amazing ability to adapt to any situation. We learn and grow from our experiences, and we all change and grow out of it. Nothing is ever permanent. We're always in a state of flux. So in this case of young people, they can be considered, when they're not exposed to the world, they're still in that formative years where they're still learning, getting used to how the world works. So when they're exposed to ideas, they're still considered malleable. Young people, like rough clay, can shape them. Like, for example, when I was 18 years old, I don't think I had a proper understanding of politics at all. I mean, just ask yourself, do you believe what were your political views when you were 18 and compared to now? Can you say for certain that it was exactly the same and it just stayed the same throughout your entire life? No, because we're always changing, we're always adapting. And for young people, they're only beginning to go through that process of change. They're only now just transitioning. And with that transition, they're open to all kinds of ideologies and ideas that they can take in and acclimate. And that's why there are certain dangers in how young people take on these ideas. Next slide. Now there are potential pitfalls if young people, when we view them in the traditional sense as quite naive, easily manipulated, or susceptible. So when we involve young people into the electoral process, it opens them up to be able to support individuals. And the dangerous part here is that when certain individuals, they can use this as leverage to use populist rhetoric or say whatever is popular to young people, whether or not it's a benefit or a detriment to them at all. And in a way, you can say that if it's misused, young people are misused in a way as political currency, so that anyone can get a mileage out and just get the support and change the whole vote in one person's favor just because they know how to appeal to young people. And we'll talk about this more later in another slide. But what we need to do is we need to build some kind of resilience for young people. We need to make sure that they're able to withstand all these kinds of intruding forces into their political development. We have to ensure that young people are mentally capable to discern whether or not they are being used or not, and how they're able to decide that if this is the right way for them, independently, without any compulsion or without any kind of persuasion. Next slide. So I think we need to go back to how, when in ancient Greece, the humans thought that being able to get education and being able to think and outside your own perspective was considered a hallmark of human achievement. And for young people, they need to know that this is the power they hold now. They need to have a firm grasp and clarity into what they hold. They can hold the power to actually change how the entire district votes and what the person will be elected. And if you can view from the abstract, it means that you're able to look outside your own personal biases. You're able to look outside your own traditional viewpoints, your own worldview, and you're able to understand what other people are thinking. You'll be able to understand other people's perspectives. And when you do, you can take in their ideas and use your ideas, and you make the best of both worlds. And I think young people should be able to develop this kind of mentality at a very young age, so that they know how to create something that's intuitive, innovative, and at the same time that's cooperative, and that touches on the theme of unity at the same time. Next slide. But if we are to awaken that kind of mentality in young people, how can we do it? one thing that can be observed is that in Malaysian politics is that there's too much emphasis on political individuals. We always see the same faces on social media, on TV, and anywhere you go, it's just the same group of people saying what they need to say. But that is the problem, is that when young people are exposed to this kind of media, they see the same people, and if they become, in a way, enamored by that kind of message, they'll tend to emulate the personalities of these political individuals. And from there, they tend to start associating themselves and yet seeing themselves almost as a mirror. When we look at people we admire, we try to be the best, we try to be like them, we aspire to be like them. However, when we admire people, we have to also understand that just as human as us, they also have their own faults and problems. We tend not to see that because we're too enamored and we adore the image of the people we admire. And when we admire politicians, we also take in the good aspects and the bad aspects of them. And I don't think that is very conducive or a healthy environment at all, because that would be only looking at one worldview. There's only one stroke of the pen without looking at every other alternative on how to develop our political sensibilities. So then it just leaves as a slippery slope that we become like the people we choose to be. Like, for example, a few years ago when growing up, I always saw Najib Razak was always on TV making a speech, and I thought, this person here talks with such dignity, grace, so much poise, and I thought, this is what an educated man looks like. He sounds so strong and so authoritative. And I thought that I would like to speak like that one day. I want to sound like that one day. And slowly I tend to just look at him in a way, I create this own bias for him, that I would try, in a way, defend what he would say, even though I might think that's wrong or not. And it just pulls you into that kind of spiral and loop that no matter what, you'll just support what they say. And that's not healthy at all to a functioning democracy. Next slide. So I think, in a way, politicians might need to actually step away, share the limelight, not step away from the limelight. They need to share the limelight. That they cannot just be the same face on the screen. I think other certain organizations might be more conducive also, like youth organizations or youth movements which are non-affiliated or non-associated with any political party, or even influencers or other young people that's able to pave the way themselves. But we can't actually do that because sometimes we are inhibited by the environment we're in. Like, take for example, generally in Asian cultures, we have this culture of hierarchy, that people who are older than us are always in a way right, and people who are younger, your junior, must listen to what they say. There's no question there. It's because we know better, so you just have to listen to what we say. And moving from there, I don't think that it's a very good way to move as a functioning democracy, or to allow young people to become more and more aware and independent in their own worldview and thinking. We can't just infantilize young people and stifle their growth, saying that you shouldn't express yourself too much this way because it's wrong, just because by virtue that they are younger. And I've seen this kind of treatment towards how young people are just not allowed, not even allowed, then not even considered as a voice. So we need to expand this kind of understanding of how we see young people and see them from a wider context, that they might have something to offer, they might have something that's contributive or new. So when it comes to hierarchy, we might have to shift away from how we see young people. Next slide. But it's not to say that we have to remove this kind of culture of how we view older people, because when we see our seniors, it doesn't change the fact that they've lived longer than their juniors. They went through all kinds of experiences in life, and they themselves have grown through it. Our seniors, and mostly the elderly, are just travelers that went on a journey that younger people have yet to go on. And we can go to them to ask, is the journey easy and smooth? Or we can ask them, is it difficult and rough? Because they have been through it, so they have that kind of perception of how life to be is going to happen to younger people, and that kind of collective knowledge passes on. So we cannot eliminate that our reverence for older people, because there's a good precedence, because they have went through what they went through, and they can provide the guidance that young people might need moving forward. Then we move next one. So I think the main challenge here is to balance out how we guide young people and how we also allow them creative free reign of them to express themselves. If we hold them down too much and coddle them, they would either become rebellious from too much control and develop antisocial behaviors. And if this becomes a general worldview of young people, they'll form a collective that's just there to rebel for the sake of rebelling, because I was never listened to, so I'm going to rebel and make everyone listen to me. Or it'll just make them timid, and they'll just take in whatever people say at face value, and that just repeats the cycle of how young people can be perceived as, susceptible, and we can break from that. It's just that the main point here is that we need to find that right balance here. What is enough to let young people express themselves, and how much guidance do we need to give them that's not too intrusive to their development? Because when you combine youth and experience from our seniors, it prepares them in the future. And we need to prepare our young people for the future, because we are all in this together. It's not just youth itself that needs to change, because when we retire and we pass on stewardship to the next generation, do we want to be sure that we did our part to make sure that our future is guaranteed? Our future being guaranteed by them. Can we say that we've trained them and brought them up enough? So if you would like to see yourself reflecting on the years past of when you were young, and knowing that you will be taken care of, your country will be taken care of, because you've cultivated young people who are capable administrators. So if you say yes, then we all need to go get in this together of how we see young people. We need to change how we see young people. We need to let them speak up more. We need to look at them and not just guide them at the same time, not just shut them down or shut them out. And with that, I'd like to conclude. Thank you so much.